The diagnosis of ADHD and high intelligence can be a blocker, can also be a superpower in some areas. Marry a good woman and have kids. Instead of me saying, okay, I need to call 112 or something, I called my operations director saying I cannot do any calls.
Mike, nice to see you in Lisbon. New location, new guest for Diary of an iGaming Executive. Thank you for joining us.
Love to see you.
And you too. I think I'm right in saying this is your 10th anniversary of being in the industry. You joined in 2015. What's changed? What's stayed the same?
I like to say that I stayed the same, but it's probably not fully the case. But everything else is just not the same. Not 10 years and now is a big difference. 10 weeks and now is a big difference in this industry. Yeah. So, yeah, a lot has changed.
When we spoke in the lead up to this podcast, being a Dutchman, you said you had opinions. You were quite blunt. You were quite happy to tell people what you thought.
Yeah.
Some examples of that. You said you think differently to other people in this industry. How would you describe that? How would you give examples of that?
Think differently or talk differently, or I don't know. It's more that people say that about me, and then I started reconfirming that is the case. As you said, I'm very Dutch in a few ways. In a lot of other ways, I'm also not Dutch, but in a few ways, I'm very Dutch. I'm very punctual. I'm always on time, and I speak my mind very bluntly and unfiltered, which is appreciated by the people that love me and my wife, but in general also within the industry.
Okay, but in terms of the industry, you're on a different track to other people in terms of how you think about compliance, which is your area of the business, or I'm quite keen to drill down into that and what that looks like. There's lots of compliance solutions out there, but why are you particularly different?
Yeah, sure. So I think that comes back to that unfilteredness and bluntness, because I think it's more effective. I am not the guy that's gonna spill out here a bunch of buzzwords and buzz sentences just to please a crowd or to do some nice marketing for it. I'm an effective speaker. I like to, and I'm also in the way that I work. So I get straight to the point. And if I think something, I speak it out loud, not being really afraid of what anyone else thinks about it or what the reaction might be. I just thinking that's the way that I think, and that's the most effective way to speak it out.
And presumably that's effective in compliance, because compliance is about being direct, about being honest, about getting stuff done that you need to get done, right? So is it a sort of superpower of yours, do you think?
Yeah, it's effective. My hourly rate clients love it when I speak effectively and fast, let's put it that way. But even when I was still in-house as compliance, you are always the bearer of bad messages to VIP teams, commercial teams, etc. So I can beat around the bush about what needs to be done, or I can just say, listen, this and this is what needs to be done. We're friends, we can talk about it, or whatever the case is, but you need to bring a very clear message, and that's the way that I do it.
You say the bearer of bad news, a bit like recruitment consultants. Forgive me, BettingJobs, for mentioning that, but compliance sometimes feels, or to some people feels like a necessary evil, right? It's like, okay, we have to do compliance, but oh God, it's boring, and oh God, it's difficult. Is that the case? Do people still think like that, or have people moved on and realised that compliance can be their friend as well?
No, it's definitely moved on. So back in like 2017, 18, when you had the new AML laws coming into place, when actually casinos and online betting sites actually had to do stuff, the same things that the banks had to do, that is when it was like a culture shock basically in the industry. Like, okay, this is not just entertainment and fun and marketing and bonuses. No, we actually need to do things. So then it felt more like a buzzkill for everyone, or a roadblocker for everyone. Just we're stopping commercial in their tracks back. I think that was the opinion back then. I think now we know that it's needed. Otherwise, you're just not going to survive as a business. And in order to earn player trust, regulator trust, stakeholder trust, you need to do a proper job. There's no Wild West casinos possible anymore. Almost.
Well, there are. We'll come on to that in a minute in certain places. But
yes.
15, 20 years ago when I was at Ladbrokes, safer gambling, player protection, compliance even really was kind of one of those things we paid lip service to. It's like, I kind of need to do it. But now it feels like, as you say, it's front and center. It's really important. People understand the need for it, etc. But we have regulated so much more as an industry in recent years. Has that regulation been positive across the board, or do you feel, the older days were easier to be business in this industry?
Oh yeah, well, to make money was very easier back in the days. I'm not super positive about most regulated markets. The fact that it's regulated, I like, and there's a lot of good ideas usually in the frameworks, but the execution is always, most of the time, very poor.
Why is that?
So it starts, I think, with a lack of distrust between like the lawmakers, the politicians, and the industry. So they already think that you're coming in with bad intentions because you are a casino or a betting shop. So they try to restrict it upfront as much as possible. Whereas in my ideal world, you would have regulated frameworks that enable licensed operators to compete with the illegal market and to do innovative stuff whilst being compliant. But most regulated frameworks that you see now are so restrictive that you're almost forced to spend the money that you have on marketing and acquisition and not per se on innovation and player protection and those kind of things, which in turn should be happening to garnish more trust with stakeholders and politicians alike. So you create this environment where everyone needs to adhere to everything, whilst they are competing with an illegal market or an unlicensed market that has far more budget, far less costs, far more playing room, far more advertising room. And then you're trying to compete with them while having this whole framework around you, getting taxed into oblivion in some places. So by doing that, you create the mentality within the industry that you don't want as a regulator or as a politician. That's how I see it.
Yeah. We live, it's going to sound like my dad now, but we live in a sort of divided world, and he'll blame social media, others do, whatever. But we live in a kind of divided industry as well, it would seem to me. We're in Lisbon, as we've talked about. Across there at the show, there are plenty of companies who are very focused on regulated markets, want to tell everybody they're very focused on regulated markets. And there are lots of people who are very happy to talk about the black market.
Yeah.
It used to be called the grey market, but now they're out and proud. It's the black market. And we seem to have gone in two different directions, and no one's kind of occupying that middle ground anymore. You used to be able to do both. You might have had a shell company or whatever, but where does that end? How does a show organizer like SBC or Clarion, do they still take the money of these people who are in the black markets? Is there a moral dilemma here for us as an industry? Yeah,
you do notice that there is some dilemma there. That being said, things that were okay a few years ago are no longer okay today, even on events where you have mixed of unlicensed and licensed offerings. But also at the events, you notice the budget differences between licensed and unlicensed.
Yeah,
right?
Huge.
So if you are a licensed operator in a small local market, you don't have the same marketing budget that the unlicensed offering has. So your stand is going to be smaller. You have a less budget to do. So you're also competing on that level with them. But you also see in the event space, you do see some events globally where the regulators are actually expecting the local the events to only be having licensed operators there. So the shift is also going to be taking place on an event level.
Yeah, I wonder if we'll have two different types of shows in the future, one for regulated, one for unregulated. But
someone was joking with me earlier this week, said we should organize a regulated ice and call it rice.
Okay, so that's today. Take me back to the beginning. How did you get your start in the industry?
I started in bottom customer service. So before that, I was working in the Netherlands in insurance and traffic management. I was a traffic manager over there. I moved to Malta because I was just looking for something different. I didn't feel like important enough to not go into customer service. I was like, this is a new industry. Let me just try this out. And I loved it from the start. Did customer service for a few months, then got promoted to team leader. Quite rapidly after that, went into payments, risk and compliance. And I never left. It's a area of the industry that challenges my mind day in, day out. And I love that.
How did the unfiltered Mike get on in customer service?
Very well. I think I was one of the best performing agents out there because I work very fast. I also like to joke around even with clients or customers or punters, which they love. And if there's complaints or disputes, you also don't want to come across Mike. I think we had the best performing team in the United Kingdom of 2015 and 16 throughout. which was showing internally and externally. I think we changed a few things in the way that we were communicating with players that was really effective.
So you moved into compliance.
Yeah.
Give us a potted history, give us your LinkedIn, if you like, of
Sure.
the companies that you worked for before you went on to set up your own thing, which we'll go on to talk about in a minute. But when you were in-house, when you were working for other people, give us that career path.
I only worked for 2 companies in-house, which are the Command Group and BetClick. So Command brought me in through customer service, gave me the opportunity to actually create a risk team, because this was back when there was no source of funds, source of wealth, anything, and this has to be created back then. So I was part of the creation of the risk team there. And then I moved to BetClick to be the operational risk and compliance manager there for the key markets, France, Poland, Portugal, and the UK. I did that for 2 years, created departments there, grew the team there before I went on my own.
So you must have worked with some impressive people at those companies. Who were the standout ones? You're a leader in this industry now, right? So who were the leaders that inspired you on your journey during those years?
So back in Command, I had the pleasure to work with Daniela Vella. She was still payments team lead. She's now the COO of the Command Group, worked her way up fully. And in BetClick, I was working with Tatjana, the head of risk, who was there also for 10 years. I always served under female leadership, actually, which not a lot of people do in this industry, apparently. But I always worked under female leadership. And when I give examples of who I worked with, who I looked up to, it's basically those 2.
And
they stand out.
Do they do it differently to the male leaders, do you think? Or what was it about their femaleness that, or maybe it wasn't? Was there anything that stood out from that?
It's just, power women, I don't know, powerhouses. I like that, when they're confident and out there, and also speaking opinions and actually giving ideas and doing the leadership, which were really exemplary cases.
So you're in-house and you decide to go and just set up your own consultancy or go into consultancy. The change from here to there, what prompted that? Why did you feel that was something that you wanted to do or was required within the industry?
Quite literally, the market was calling for me. Because the Netherlands was opening as a market after finally 12 years of debating regulation. And I was one of the, I think maybe 2 or 3 compliance people on the island of Malta that spoke Dutch, that has experience and knows the field. So I was getting approached left, right, and center by companies saying, "Hey, you maybe want to help us out with going into Netherlands. We need expertise, etc." So I asked the company I was working for back then, do you guys have plans to go into the Netherlands? And they didn't. They had their core focus on their core markets, being France, Portugal, and Poland. So I made a decision to answer the calls and go on my own. And instead of just joining one company, I said this is a good opportunity for me to actually go on my own and start working in my home country, basically.
Would you describe yourself as an entrepreneur? Did it come naturally to you to set up your own business?
Yes. Yeah, I've always been doing things on the side or before, even as a kid, I'm always doing things, setting things up, helping people out, doing projects, anything that ranges from music to compliance to whatever it may be.
At the same time as that, so that's all very positive.
Sure.
A bit of luck, Dutch market regulating, you being a Dutchman, you having the skill set, being in the right place at the right time. COVID happens at around the same time.
Yeah.
How's that, as someone who has gone on their own? You didn't have the security or the kind of the comfort of working in a big company anymore? Was that doubly challenging because you were on your own, or did you find it okay?
Yes and no, because it was more or less around the same time. I was still working. So when COVID happened and when I was working on my own, and we were on Malta, which had like a almost full lockdown. And my now wife is a chef, or was a chef back then, and she was also first not working because of COVID, and then she had to be brought in for delivery, etc. So I had a decision. I could be either sitting at my house playing PlayStation like everyone else because we cannot do anything, or I doubled down on what I think was the right way. So I talked it over with my now wife, and said, "You mind if I start working 12, 14 hours a day to do this?" Because I was doing a few applications at the same time, a few frameworks at the same time. So I just made the conscious decision, like I'm just gonna double down and do it. So I started working a lot of hours in-house, literally in the house. It worked out really well.
So rather than learn to play the guitar or what other people did in COVID, you actually
Yeah.
learn to run a business of your own, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And we've spoken off camera, and I know you've spoken on camera before about your diagnosis of ADHD with high intelligence.
Yeah.
Does that help you in this respect? And you're talking about working long hours and dedicating time to stuff. How does it help? How does it hinder you as a person with this industry?
Yeah, so that the diagnosis of ADHD and high intelligence can be a blocker, can also be a superpower in some areas. It highly depends on whether you're interested in the subject that you're doing or not. So in school, that was really clearly visible by half of my grades being top level. The other half would never be anything, because if it's not interesting to me, I will not do it. It will not click. And I like my line of work. Because it's challenging. I solve problems, I create things, I teach things, and I train and do. So I like it. And when I get into the zone, basically, as I call it, I become highly productive, really effective, and I can just zoom in and do things in a few hours that others take a week for.
So do what you're good at and concentrate on that, and let others do the stuff that you're not good at. Is that
Yeah.
just an easy equation to make?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I was on my own, I was on my own. So I also had to do the other things, invoicing and contracts and etc., which I managed, but it's not my expertise, not my core. So now with BetComply, I have it fully segregated, and now it's becoming even more effective.
So speaking of health,
Yeah,
mental health and what have you, a year ago or just over a year ago, you had a stroke
yeah,
as a man in his 30s.
yeah.
Talk me through that day, what happened, how it happened, and what the sort of shorter term and the longer term effects of that have been.
Sure. I was working in my home office. I was just having a regular day. I think it was 10, 11 in the morning. I felt like my leg, I think it was my leg or my arm that I started first. I'm feeling a bit numb. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm sitting wrong in my desk chair or something. You get that numb feeling sometimes, in a leg or an arm. So then I tried to stand up, and then I was my arm first, and then I tried to stand up, and then I felt my leg was also going numb, and then I tried to walk, and then I felt my whole right side basically going numb, and instead of me saying, okay, I need to call 112 or something, I called my operations director saying I cannot do any calls. That was the plan, that I was going to say that, but when I was calling, it was just a bunch of mumbling going out. Clear sign of a mini stroke in the brain. So that was scary. I had to go, to the hospital, the whole thing, ECGs, blood work, fluids, the whole thing. And it was like the week that my son was born, as well, my youngest. This was a really, really stressful time. A mini stroke when you're in your 30s is not fun, to say the least. Realizing that it could have gotten worse, and I might have not seen my son get born, because I could have died.
So you had the stroke and then he was born?
Yeah, I think it was like, there was like 2 days in between or something.
Wow.
It was like literally that week before.
Quite a momentous week in your life.
Yeah, it was quite a momentous week, yes. And also for my wife, she was focused on delivering a baby, but she was at the same time also concerned about me being alive or not, basically. So in the short, it was really stressful. I was also then, well, coincidentally or luckily enough, I also had paternity leave following. So I was forced to take leave anyway. Because I'm quite sure that if I didn't have that, I would return to work in 3 days, because that's how I function.
Yeah.
So on the short term, it was really scary. But then I was forced to make a lot of changes. People that know me for a long time know that I work really hard. I like to play hard. I like to party hard if I can. I cannot do that anymore. So I really had to go back to no more than 40 hours. I had to of work a week. I had to change my diet because I was eating just unhealthy. Going to bed early, 9, 10 p.m. And lower the stress levels. That's been working out. We're now a year ahead. it's not, I don't do it as strict anymore. So for example, when I first had it, I really went back to Monday to Friday, 8 to 4, that's it. Then I also learned that I was in those hours not always as much as effective because people were calling, emailing me, slacking me, the whole thing. And I also have to do a lot of project work. So I made like a decision to start working on Sunday instead and be off on Monday and just make some changes here and there. So it's not as rigid anymore as 8 to 4 and in bed by 9, but it's still no more than 40 hours and it's still early in bed. And I just have an occasional drink at the events, but that's it. So that's the longer term for it in terms of my health.
Sure. Most people don't use paternity leave to get over a stroke, so that's a new one, but probably not recommended, right?
No.
If you're not doing those hours, if you're not doing that work, and you need to from a health point of view, who does? Did you learn to delegate? Did you learn to say, actually, there's stuff here that other people could be doing, and let's let them do it? And did it empower your team in a sort of weird sort of way?
Yeah. So when I had the stroke, we were already in like scaling phase. I think we were with 13 or 14 of us. And just in that month, our operations director, Luz, started full time. She was working for us part time in the months before. But she became like fully my right hand internally, forcing me to delegate stuff where I, before that, liked to have control over them. So the forced element of delegating things turned out to be the catalyst that we needed even more, because we grew even more, became more effective. The team was able to step up and take responsibilities in areas, and that's been working out even better. So I think the timing, I don't want to say the timing of the stroke was right, but the timing of the stroke with Luz becoming a full-time as my right hand as operations director, really taking over the delegation of leading the consultancy team, and basically the filter way up to myself, was one thing that we needed as a company, apparently. But you only find out afterwards.
Yeah, so terrible at the time, but longer term,
yes,
positive for you and positive for employees within the company, and positive more generally or broader for the company itself, etc.
Yeah.
So we talked about you, we talked about the people that work at BetComply, but talk to me about BetComply as a company. What makes you different? There are plenty of compliance solutions on the market over there in the conference center, but if you were, give us your elevator pitch, why are you different?
Well, we do any license in any jurisdiction, any area of compliance. Never filled an application, never filled an audit. And that's the confidence that we have. And it's because it's true. And we don't have that reputation in simple offshore jurisdictions. We have them in the most highly regulated markets out there. So we are presenting us as the most trusted partner out there. There's companies out there that trust us with very important matters to them. So for example, if you have 24 licenses, local licenses, and you're publicly listed, you want to go for a new license, you better get it. Because if you don't get it, and you fail it, you have to inform 25 regulators that you filled an application,
right?
Which can have a domino effect you don't want.
I can imagine, yeah.
So we are being trusted also by those types of companies to actually help them deliver those kind of projects, because we are able to give some form of guarantee, not a full guarantee, but some form of guarantee. And we are able to do not just the licensing bit or the regulatory bit, but also actually the technical bit, product compliance, cybersecurity, etc. And in some areas, legal services as well. So we can take on a full project, and the companies really feel that we take ownership, like as if it is our project, as if it's our money on the line for them, and they love that. And in the way that we communicate and price and etc., it is as I am. It is blunt, it is effective, and you know what you're getting.
We were talking earlier about a moral stance that some people are taking, some people aren't taking. Do you take a moral stance as a compliance company? Are there companies you won't work with, or do you feel yourself as a person that is there to give advice? You're not running their business. That's their business. They do what they want to do. You'll just advise them on how they can do it from a compliance point of view.
Sure. There's definitely some filtering. We don't work with everyone.
Right.
Because
who would you not work with? Don't need to name names, but who would you not work with?
Well, anyone or anything that can tarnish our track record. So, because like when I was talking about the guarantee of an application, there's some things that we don't control. We don't control UBOs, we don't control owners, we don't control where the money is coming from. So I can help you create the best framework out there and present that. But if it's on an ownership level or where the money is coming from level, not okay, and then we don't do it. And that's one side in the filtering or onboarding process. But there's also the element of if we notice that you're coming to us basically to get a BetComply stamp of approval, so you can present that to a regulator and then do very dodgy business afterwards. If we feel that is the case up front, we don't do it.
How do you know that though? How do you got a feeling in your water that
gut feeling? I think, yeah, and experience. I think, yeah. The Netherlands is also one of those markets where you, for example, have to actually work with addiction care experts and experts from experience. And they know this like no other, like who is coming towards them for a stamp of approval, or who is actually coming to actually like do a good job or do a good project or actually gather knowledge. And I think I learned, not just learned it from them, and I got it more even from them on how you filtered out that moral stance when you're dealing with companies.
You might not want to answer this, but let's try anyway. When I was a kid, or was younger in the industry, I should say, the UK GC was always the kind of gold standard, or we thought it was in the UK. Don't know if it still is, don't know if it ever was, but and maybe it's awkward for someone who works in compliance to answer this, but what for you is the best regulator in the world at the moment? Where who's getting it right?
I think I want to say Denmark. It's a good example, I think, because it's very clear. There's room for operators to actually function. I think we have now about 35 to 40 operators in a country like Denmark, which is not a massive country, but they're turning general okay profits. The others doing better than others, but I think it's a clear framework, and it's a stable framework so far. I think that would be the best example, I think.
And presumably a good regulation is a balance between player protection and the ability to be profitable as a business.
Yeah.
And obviously taxation comes into that too as well. But it seems the simplest thing to say, but probably the hardest thing to do, or seem to be with some of the the regulators around the world who probably aren't getting it right.
Yeah. This whole, like I said, I think I touched on it a bit earlier, but that environment that you create, when you create a framework that is really heavy on responsible gaming, really heavy on advertising, and also with high tax, I know where it's coming from. It's coming from a good place. They don't design it with bad intentions, They design it for player protection, fighting crime, and gathering more tax revenue to spend on good things, right? That's the general thinking. The way that they construct it a lot of the times creates a different framework and different outcome. And then they don't get the tax that they think they were generating. And then, what should we do? Just increase the tax so we generate more tax. And then you get the opposite effect. You actually collect less tax. Then the Netherlands being a prime example of that.
The UK going the same way, probably.
Yes. They think, okay, we need to increase tax to generate more. Opposite effect. We need to do more restrictions or more guidelines on responsible gaming to protect the players more. And then the outcome is a lot of them go to the unlicensed market and have no player protection at all, and you don't have them inside at all. So it often comes from a good place, the ideas and the framework, but the outcome is just not what they want to see. I think European channelization is at 29%, like across Europe. That's not the aim of the framework.
So talking about being in a good place, BetComply in a good place. What's next for you guys? What do you want to do that you're not doing at the moment, or where can you go next?
Where we can go next is where the new markets are coming. Finland, New Zealand, Alberta, Canada. There's the more local markets coming. Where the market goes, we go. So in terms of where we go, we are more going to be developing more ourselves in terms of product and IP. So there will be some things out there. But I think in terms of where we go is where the market wants us to go. But in terms of what we want to do is develop some more internally.
Fair enough. Okay. We always finish these podcasts with 3 quick fire questions.
Right.
We ask our iGaming execs these 3. If I was to put you on the spot and you had to describe your favourite musician or favourite band, who would that be?
Lauryn Hill.
Lauryn Hill. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Didn't you expect that?
No one said that before. I've had some very varied answers, but not Lauryn Hill. That's cool.
Yeah.
Cool with that. Cool with Lauryn Hill. If it was your last day on Earth, and hopefully it's not, what would your last meal be? What would you eat?
I'm a very simple guy, meat and potatoes. So I want steak and some potatoes.
Okay. Yeah. People have said steak, so that's not an uncommon answer. And it's probably my answer too as well. But okay, you've probably had lots of advice over the years from people you worked with or people you work, for. But if you could give a piece of advice to the next generation of iGaming executives, what would that be?
Marry a good woman and have kids.
That doesn't feel very industry specific.
I know, but it's the best answer because it's the biggest blessing I've had.
Yeah.
My wife is an absolute rock star. I could not do anything without her, and my kids are the biggest best thing there is. That's the simple answer for me.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great, Mike. Lovely to speak to you. Thanks for your time and
thank you.
best of luck for the future.
Pleasure.